Cup of Joe with Grandpa Dez. Hey, Justin, how you doing?
Hey, Grandpa Dez. Paul. Grandpa
Either one's
Dez.
fine. Either one's fine. I'll be honest with you. Garrett has asked me in the past, Garrett Gonzalez, who anybody watching this probably knows, asked me like,
Boss.
yeah, the boss man. Why do you use the Grandpa Dez? Why not just use your own name? And I'm like, well, I'm like, I'm trying to think of the word, but I guess I'm down on myself, and I think I need to be a gimmick. And if I'm just me, if I'm just Paul Fontaine, nobody's gonna watch. But if people are watching, Grandpa Dez, just sit down with a nice old man and have a cup of coffee, and you know, they might
I
be
know what
more
you mean.
inclined to
It's
watch.
when you're performing. We're using that term very lightly in this sense, but I can see how it can be easier to, it's like putting on a jacket and going outside. It's like
Hmm.
it, it's you get to I don't know how to explain it too articulately. I guess it's too early for us, but it's like there's like wiggle room to
Hmm.
you can test things out and see if it works or not. And it's kind of a big vague statement because it works for this, but it works in like any kind of performance or anything where a microphone is involved.
But then, so then the comeback that he has then is, well, people know you. They
That's
read
true.
your writing. They see your tweets on UFC. But they don't know Grandpa Dez. Unless you're on the F4W board, and really, I don't even post on that board hardly anymore. So like, people don't really know me. And I guess my whole thing was, well, it's not necessarily if they know me. It's if they see the show once. I wanted to give them a name that was easy to search. And I will say that if you search Grandpa Dez, like, my channel is going to come up right away. And Spotify, and Apple, like where the audio goes and everything. So I think it works in that sense. But I am starting to wonder, and I may start to pull people or something and say, maybe I should just go with my regular name. And then that opens it up for more things. Like, I got an interview I'm doing later today. And, when I was pitching it to Garrett, and this isn't for this show, I was like, well, I'm going to do this one as myself. And it's like, I'm sure in his mind, he's just rolling his head like, yeah, this is what I told you, like, 2 months ago.
Well, I know what you mean though. 'Cause it's not like we're not celebrities or anything, but we do.
No.
Our work exists publicly, and our names are out there. So, in a lot of ways, it's easier to just tag your name and include it in that batch of output that you've already made. So,
Hmm.
in that sense, ultimately, that makes the most sense. But coming from a personal standpoint, I'm sure you feel this way too. It's like you feel like in the back of your head there are these expectations to write about or talk about or be a certain way, or you might not always want to. When you're writing about UFC or any sport, there's if you're writing about it seriously, especially with UFC, there's not much editorializing you can do. If somebody gets
No.
knocked out in a minute, like the Johnny Walker match a couple
Yeah.
weeks ago, what else is there to say? He got starched.
Yeah.
Like,
Or even this
so
past weekend, Makhachev and Green, like, on our podcast, we talked about that for like 10 seconds. I mean,
yeah, so it's like how much of your personality can you put into news piece? So
yeah.
I get why Grandpa Dez has to stick around.
Yeah. And I mean, and again, maybe I'll change it. I'll see. I do think that it may be easier for people to understand that don't necessarily, that aren't in our fight game group. And even some of the people in the
Mhm.
fight game group might be wondering, like, why is he Grandpa Dez? Um, I, uh, I think back to, I went to WrestleMania. The only WrestleMania I ever went to was in Dallas in 2016, and I sat down at the steakhouse that you pay for to get together with the F4W crew, and there was a guy that was sitting at the table, and we were all introducing ourselves or whatever. And then I said my name, and he's like, "Are you Paul Fontaine?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh, I read your stuff all the time. I love it. I can't believe I'm sitting here with Paul Fontaine." And I was just like, I was like blown away, like I never thought that somebody would, you know, like I know I put this stuff out there. I've been writing for the Observer now for probably 10 years or pretty close to it.
Your
And
name is one that I always have seen. Like I've always been familiar with it between seeing it on the site, and Dave talks about you on some of the podcasts just randomly. You or
yeah,
John LaRocca, those are names I've always heard for years. And it's always, I mean, for the past couple of years now, it's good to put a name to the face. So
he's even
it's
put
cool.
it in the Observer. Like, I remember there's one time I was reading and it was just randomly, it was like some angle that they were doing. Oh, I know what it was. It was when Eva Marie was doing that thing with Dewdrop on Raw, and she announces the winner as, and the winner is, and then it was like Eva Marie, even though it was Dewdrop that had won or something like that. And I had sent Dave a text and I said, I think the gimmick is that her name is also Eva Marie. And so that she's going to wrestle, and then even the real Eva Marie is going to take the credit. So he put that in the Observer. He says Paul Fontaine thinks this is what's going to happen. And I'm reading this and I'm like, I just sent him like I wasn't intending it for to go in the Observer. And it was like, so on one sense I'm like annoyed. It's like if I knew it was going to go in the Observer, I would have given it some thought. But then in another thing, it's kind of cool.
Right.
And then I'm sure, when I meet people, it's like this guy that I met, and I'm actually good friends with him now. If he's watching, he might even remember it. And for me, like, it was like, I'm not worthy, like I'm just some goof that's writing stuff on Wrestling Observer and, getting paid a little bit of money, but it's not like it's my career or anything, whereas I look at a guy like my podcast partner, Ryan Frederick, who is like, he's got a dedicated column in the Observer every week. He's covering UFC every weekend. He's been to like 200 UFC events and everything. And that guy should have like way more, recognition, in my opinion. And people look at us, people look at us the same. And I'm like, no, this guy puts
Ryan
a lot
breaks
of work.
MMA news in English. Like it's on our website before. Yeah. I mean, it's
like a week before sometimes.
And because I edit his work every week, it's always kind of in my head, and then I'll see it in the news. I'm like, wait, Ryan wrote about that like a week ago.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even at the time, it was like, I'm like, I knew that, but I didn't know that I knew that. But thanks, Ryan. It's for sure.
Yeah,
He knows what's going on.
And it's like, I just wish more people would know it. And I had a guy on this show a couple months ago, and it was a guy that I went to school with, and I had just reconnected with on Facebook, and I just wanted to catch up with him and say, hey, come on my show. And so we were talking about how I got into writing and stuff, because a lot of times these conversations end up being about me. I mentioned something about my friend Ryan had come to Winnipeg to see the UFC, and he got credited through Wrestling Observer. And the guy's like, oh, are you talking about Ryan Frederick? And I'm like, no, actually, I'm talking about Ryan Pike. But he knew Ryan Frederick. Like, he's a UFC fan and he knows the name. And so it's like, he's got a lot of name recognition, but I think a lot of it is about being a self-promoter, so you look at people like an Andrew Zeri and a Denise Salcedo, or, if you want to go into MMA, like, Luke Thomas, like Ariel Helwani, people like that, like they just hustle and they promote and they, this is their life, and for Ryan, like Ryan's got a day job, and he does the UFC thing and he works real hard at it and he does an excellent job at it, but it's not his job. So maybe he doesn't feel the need to promote himself, or maybe he's just not the kind of personality that wants to promote himself. But I like that he has a platform on this site. And that's what I love about Fight Game Media is, it's giving a voice and to people, a literal voice and podcasts and video and stuff, but also a written voice. So that's why I like a lot of stuff you're doing. You've got, to turn it over to you now, you've got High Tension, and then I guess, is it, or wait a minute. Okay. High Tension. Is that the one that you're bringing back, or is that the one with
High
Fumi?
Tension? No, let's write that down. So we'll get to that in a second. High Tension is okay. So we know we did the Fight Game Patreon pivot late last year. So Garrett and I we were looking at all the stats on the Patreon. And it was also we launched the free feed too, which I think has been a good move. But we just decided it was like October, November, and at the time, it was mostly JD and I, and John LaRocca would pop on early on too. But JD and Mike Gilbert on Brace for Impact, that was a lot hotter than our niche Japanese wrestling podcast on a behind a paywall. So it's not like it was gone. It's just kind of like it'll come up and we'll put it on YouTube, or I have some bonus ideas that will probably pop up in the next month or two. But
Well, the New Japan Cup.
New Japan Cup, we might talk to Samza again. I've been talking to guests, but they're all overseas guests. They're in Australia and England. So it's the timing thing. And my schedule's been crazy. My wife and I just moved to a more like stable, like we have our own place. We're here for a year. We moved to Los Angeles late fall last year. We were in the guest house, share house deal. So we were here, but it didn't feel like steady, stable yet. So that was also the time where we just like, we'll just put it on a hold right now, but High Tension will come back anytime. It's just a way to talk about Japanese wrestling. But especially during the pandemic, some weeks there would just be no news. If there was there was a big holiday week, there are probably tons of shows on the same day at different venues. And it's not a TV market, Japanese wrestling. It's like a live event market. So you might go, it's like UFC. Sometimes there might be like 2 weeks where there's nothing really going on.
We just had a month. We just had a month with nothing. So Ryan and I were trying to fill content for that month. We did like year-end awards and, looking back on history and stuff like that. Like, and you guys, I know you've done that in the past too. Like, so when the whole feed first started, as a person that was on the network and a patron myself, I was listening to your show, every week. And then with all the stuff we have on there, it started to become overwhelming. So me personally, I'm not as interested in Japanese wrestling, although I really am interested in the history. So those were my favorite shows. But when you're talking about the current stuff, like if I'm not watching it, I'm not that interested in listening to people talk about it.
It's hard to get people into it. Also, it's just kind of like something like I love the current All Japan Pro Wrestling for the most part. I think it's one of the best companies out there as far as just wrestling, just in ring. I think they lucked into this great roster when Wrestle One dissolved. They picked up and started training a lot of younger guys. Like they're great, and I guarantee you, if it was in front of people's eyes, people would love it. But they're just on that side of the fence where they don't have any good alliance or ability to distribute their stuff. They don't even have commentary on a lot of their shows. But that's just the nature of what it is now. Yeah.
That's Kenta Miyahara, right? That's his group?
Yep. Kenta Miyahara, Suwama, a lot of young, I would say they're the best group that they have a number. I would say like 6 to 8 heavyweight, like great heavyweight wrestlers. They're big dudes who can move, and it feels modern, but it also doesn't feel gimmicky. I think you could always make that case for somebody like Keith Lee, where he's big, but what he does isn't big man stuff. He actually does small man stuff. That's the gimmick.
Yeah,
it's not like that.
So I've never actually seen AGPW, but obviously I've heard about it, and Dave Meltzer talks about especially their big matches a lot of times, and looks like Kenta Miyahara is a guy that I know I need to see.
I think I'm not exaggerating. JD will attest to this too. He is, he's Tanahashi and Okada rolled up into one guy. And what I love about him is that I'm telling you, these shows are not well
produced.
I mean, the production is okay. There's just not that many people there, no matter what. Even at Korakuen.
Yeah.
And it's pandemic too. And there are other companies running, and they're not that packed. But he acts like he's in the Tokyo Dome every single time. He is not rattled by it. It's amazing to see somebody go 110%, even when it's like so obvious that this is not a 110% situation.
I just looked at a picture of him, and I see that just looking at him, I can see the Tanahashi and Okada with a little bit of Hiromu mixed in.
I think he's funny, and there's something he does that a lot of people don't like, where he has this ongoing kind of feud with the senior referee Kyohei Wada and him, and they fight a lot, and Wada will even get to the point where he'll grab Miyahara's hair to break the hold.
Oh wow.
But I think some people hate it, but I think it's one of the reasons why he gets so over, because he's very much like he's like the class clown. I always compared him to Zach Morris on Saved by the Bell.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He's really he's kind of dumb, and he's like a class clown. He doesn't always do the right thing, but he has a good heart. Kind of like that feeling.
Yeah.
He's a good guy, but he's not always doing good things. He's kind of mischievous.
Almost, yeah, it sounds almost too like a little bit like Cena.
In a way,
like,
yeah,
like with the, the class clown thing, and and not taking things seriously, but can go when they go. Although from what you're saying, I will assume he's 10 times better than Cena in the ring.
I think. I mean,
although Cena's really good, it's I don't mean to display him.
Different. They're different.
Yeah. I mean, it's a different market they're working for.
Also, Miyahara openly said like how influenced he was by 90s WWF. Randy Savage, like he used to watch tapes.
Okay.
He has that kind of crossover charisma too. He has that yelling into the camera, being kind of cool and showing off stuff that would absolutely get over here and that you don't often see in Japan. It's kind of
so I need you to send me some links for some Miyahara matches, but don't send me like 1 hour ones. I know that a 1 hour Miyahara match doesn't feel like an hour, but it is an hour, and I don't have an hour sometimes. So if you send me some 20-minute matches, I'll definitely check them out. Yeah.
Well, he's going. This is a spoiler. He just re-won the Triple Crown. The guy who had it earlier, Jake Lee. Yeah, he broke his orbital bone. One of the new guys accidentally broke it, but they turned it into an angle. So they turned that new guy into a monster heel. He had to vacate the title. Miyahara is a champion again, and he's calling himself Mr. Triple Crown.
Oh,
so that's the gimmick.
So the Triple Crown is the GHC, right?
GHC is Noah.
Oh, okay. Oh, so this is a different Triple Crown. Okay.
Triple Crown is the. So this
I thought for some reason it was the same Triple Crown, but it just moved over to All Japan. I knew it was Noah.
Similar.
Like I used to watch a lot of Noah.
I think Noah was on TV in Canada.
It was. That's when I watched it. Yeah,
that's pretty amazing to me.
It was old. Yeah. It was like maybe 2 years old when it was on here, but it was the heyday. So it was. I was seeing Kenta. I was seeing Kobashi. Even. I think Misawa might have still been there. Although when he passed away, like that's the time frame when I was still watching it, and it's probably around the time they stopped airing it.
And that was also like a marker for a lot of people where in Japan, at least, they stopped watching wrestling. And
kind of like here with Benoit and Eddie. Yeah, similar.
Just it took the wind out of everybody, and he got in the ring. So, but GHC, that's the Noah title, which Vader actually named that title. Global Honored Crown. The Triple Crown now is the same one that the previous. So this All Japan is technically not the original All Japan. On paper or in the books, it's technically not the same company, but spiritually it's the same company, and it still has the name. And the belts are the original belt. It's the NWA, the UN title, the international title, and the what was it? It's like a fake company, like the Pacific Wrestling Federation title that Dory Funk. Kind of. He was the commissioner, and he still appears. He appeared last year before the match, and did a declaration. They read the formal. This is going to be defended on this day, and yada yada.
So last year during the pandemic, they got him.
It was a video. He said in a video.
Okay.
God, it feels like I don't know if it's a year or 2 years ago.
Okay.
Like 20,
I know time over the last 2 years is like.
I think last June they had the big Ota Ward show, and what they did was they kind of separated the three titles, and they had those were the long matches where one guy Yuma Aoyagi had the UN title, and he would come in holding that, and Jake Lee would hold the international title. They would all kind of whoever would you had to beat two guys in a 3-man knockout tournament sort of thing.
Okay.
It's a sumo thing. So it's basically like Miyahara and his tag team partner Aoyagi.
Yeah, Jake Lee was in that too, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So you had to, it was like a 3-way, and you had to beat the other two guys in the match
in a row
consecutively. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah, I remember.
But if you lost, it would start over again.
Yeah. So it's almost like it is a horrible comparison, but like the WWE version of the Indian strap match, where you have to touch the corner.
You have to start over. Yeah, there's elements of that. It's from sumo. It's from it was like a knockout tournament, because In sumo, it would also go a lot more quickly. It wouldn't go an hour. It would probably go
Yeah.
a couple minutes.
Now, was that the same company that had that one match where, where the two guy, it was like the match was like an hour long and the two guys didn't even touch for like 20 minutes?
That was Noah. That was
Oh, that was
Kazuki
Noah.
Fujita.
Okay.
Kazuki
Yeah.
Fujita, who now has the Noah title. I don't know
Okay.
if you remember Fujita from Pride.
Oh,
He
yeah.
was a Pride champion. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
well, there's a
still
Fujita
strong.
in New Japan now too, and it was like that can't be the same guy.
Oh no,
It
that's a young
wasn't.
lion.
Yeah. He's awesome.
All the
Him
young
and
lions are insane.
No, but
Oiwa?
these two, Oiwa and Fujita, are I like just randomly, I don't know how, because I don't watch New Japan spot shows, but I watched this one randomly. It was like a Sunday night. There was nothing on, so I just flipped on New Japan World and seen if there was anything recent I hadn't watched. And I watched, they said it was one of those guys' second match ever, and it was the other guy's first match ever.
Yeah.
And they wrestled each other, and it was a 10-minute draw. And I'm telling you, this was an easy 3-star match.
Oh yeah,
the
young lions are on. I don't know what Shibata is doing with them, but
well, is he training with the Japan guys too? I thought
when he's in Japan, I know I'm sure he has. But it's also like it's
the guys they recruit too. Like
is that
yeah.
But it's all the trainers are like Nagata, Milano, and Taguchi and Tenza. Like, of course, you want to learn from somebody like Tenzan or Yuji Nagata. I mean.
Yeah,
because I mean they could still go. I mean, he wrestled last night and looked great with Will Ospreay. I actually caught a little bit. They had a Budokan show.
I got to get my Japan bracket in, don't I? That starts tomorrow.
Oh yeah, I
right?
do that too. Yeah, it does. They kind of had like a formal they had a lot of old guests last night.
I heard about that. Fujinami and
Fujiwara. Minoru Tanaka looked great.
Saw Fujiwara in the Rambo. I popped.
Yeah.
So what was I gonna say? Oh damn, I lost my train of thought. So the young guns. So the guys that I'm super interested in. Okay, so everybody talks about who's the guy that wrestled. He's in Strong right now.
Mm-hmm.
He just recently wrestled Lawler for the Strong title.
Russ Taylor.
No, the Japanese guy, Umino or
Ren Narita.
Ren Narita, right?
Yeah,
everyone talks about him like that's the big guy. For me, the first time I saw this guy, I was blown away, and I've been raving about him ever since. And everyone talks about this guy and that guy, Shooter Umino and Yuya Uemura, and all these guys. Yota Tsuji to me is like I am such a big fan of that guy, and I hear he's doing really well in England. Mm-hmm. And I just think like when he comes back with his look, especially if he grows the hair out again, because I know he cut the hair right before he left, with his build and his size and his ability, and he's got the comedy like he was doing as a young lion. He was in those comedy commercials that they were putting up in between the matches during the pandemic, and he's funny. I don't even understand Japanese, and I can tell he's funny. And I just think he's got it all, that guy.
I saw some pictures of him. He's in Revolution Pro right now. Yeah. It looks like he has some kind of get-up or like a gimmick thing. He's wearing.
I hope they don't Master Con him or something.
I think it might. I don't know if it's like Okan, but it looked a little more along the lines of like Hiroki Goto. Like he had
that's not too bad.
I don't know. Yeah, I haven't seen it. Umino too. He has a look. He is like a little mini Tanahashi. He's got the white and pink pants. But
is that the guy that Alvarez is always claiming is going to be headlining the Dome in like 5 years, or is that Narita? It's one of those two.
I don't know who he says, but honestly, there's an argument for all of them.
Yeah.
Umino,
for me, it's Tsuji because of the size. Like,
Tsuji,
Japan loves their size. You know, like
he can move too.
Well, that's the thing. So if you've got the size and you can work, like the sky's the limit for you. Like. Everyone compares him to Nakanishi, but better.
He's way better than Nakanishi.
Yeah, but better, but the same look. And they gave Nakanishi the title. So
that was different because that was also during the time when legitimacy was so cherished, and I don't know if he won the national wrestling championships.
I think he was in the Olympic. He was in the
trials. His brother was.
Yeah.
So he had that legitimacy. I remember seeing him on Nitro, Kurosawa. Yeah. Remember him with Colonel Rob Parker?
The funny thing is I remember Kurosawa, and I was a big fan of Kurosawa, but I had no idea that Kurosawa was Nakanishi. So I only recently, because it was when you and JD and and Justin, or Justin, you're Justin. You and JD and John
Yeah.
reviewed a Dome show, and you talked about it, and then I blew my mind. Like I was like, oh my god, that was Kurosawa. Like I had no idea, because I remember Kurosawa, and he was awesome. Like at that time, you didn't, the Japanese guys that you would see over here were all smaller, and they flew around, and or they were old. Like you would get the guys that showed up in the Royal Rumble, like, or Masachono or Saito and guys like that, just fat. And this guy was like built like a brick shithouse, and he could move. And it was like, man, this guy, like, if this guy was in the company for 2 years, he could be the world champion. Like that's kind of, was what I probably not, like, but that's kind of where my mind went at the time. So.
But of course he's gone after a week or so.
Yeah. But for some reason I remember him. So that says something, if you remember a guy that was only there for 2 weeks, plus Colonel Rob Parker was so awesome. Anyways. Okay. So we've almost gone a half hour, and I said we're going to be around half hour. But I wanted to ask, because you've got an interesting story. And I don't know how many people know it, but you actually were in Japan for several years, and your wife is from there, right? So how did you end up there, and how did you end up back stateside?
I ended up in Japan. I went to university a little later. I didn't go right after high school. I went when I was like 24. And when I went for music, I was a musician, and I went for my degree. I came back for my degree, and I got my degree in 4 years, and then I graduated. I had a friend from the area. I'm from New York originally, and I had a friend I was having lunch with. He was actually living in Japan, and we were talking about it. I remember him it was something. I had actually been to Japan 18 years ago or so. Well, I played 2 concerts there, 2005. So that was my first taste. And I had already liked Japanese pro wrestling and all that other business. So I'm a big dork. But the opportunity it came, and I was applying for English, and also I was stopped doing music as much, and I was focusing on writing and editing, and I was doing English related stuff. So teaching English would be a great way to, work on my writing, but also get paid for it too. I got a deal in Japan. It took a long time. I had to go to Boston, get interviewed a couple times. I got the visa for me. I got hired in 2013, but I didn't go over until 2014. And I stayed there for a couple of years, filled my contract, and I came back to the States because I wanted to get my master's degree. And I came to Portland, Oregon, because it's right in between where I'm from, New York, and where my wife's from, Japan. That was the idea. But we stayed there for a couple of years. I got my degree. We got kind of stuck there during the pandemic, and there was a lot of other stuff going on at the time.
So this is so this is more recent than I thought it was. I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking this was like 2010 or something, but
even more recently. Yeah. I was there for a couple, from like 2014 to about 2017. I came back to the States in 2017, and I moved out west. And shortly after that, actually, I'd always been a wrestling fan, but I didn't have like friends that were wrestling fans too. Only my buddy Andy, who you know. But other than that, it was
that McDonald, like the guy that was on the Patreon for a while.
Andy Marshall. He was on Marshall with Kayla.
Yeah.
So it was always like a passion of mine, but it was a private passion. And especially in Japan, which sucked because I didn't have any other than my wife. I didn't have anybody to go to shows with. And then when I left, suddenly all these foreign people were coming to the Tokyo Dome. Yeah, I went to those shows. I wanted to, I wanted to hang out and speak English. But so
is that where you met Fumi?
So this is funny. I met Fumi the week I moved to Portland, Oregon. Was also the same week that the show with him and Jim Valley debuted on The Observer. Okay.
Yeah.
Portland, and when I heard his story, so it's a little bit of
Pacific Rim podcast. Yeah. Sorry.
Pacific Rim. Yeah. So it was that plus. So when I started working, I was doing publishing, editing here, doing a publishing program. I was also, I was still watching and actually writing a little bit about wrestling, but not on a professional level. And I got an opportunity through somebody I knew to edit the Taboo autobiography. So that was like my first official kind of like, okay, I actually have a job and I was at school and I have a job in wrestling technically, so I can use this
Yeah.
to, if I wanted to do more, which I did, and I used that to do more, and I got to, and through that I reached out to Fumi because I was doing a lot of like photo finding for the book. I reached out to a lot of people like Dr. Mike Lano, Fumi Taito, and others, Stu Stacks, and I was trying to find, you know, good photos, and I would give him Sabu and he would kind of okay him or not. And yeah, so that was, and Fumi was going to actually send some, but he and the author of the book, something happened between them. I had to smooth it out. But in the end, I just ended up, we had a lot in common anyway. I just moved back from Japan. And on that show, I brought up that show, Pacific Rim, because when he was talking about himself, he was talking about when he lived in Minnesota, he was, you know, doing his excursion time. I felt like, oh my gosh, I did the same thing, but on the reverse. I went to Japan and came back.
Yeah.
So and from there, from there with the like the Japanese connection and just there's enough between the wrestling and the Japanese experience to just get on it. And we just, you know, talked about wrestling and messaged each other. We hung out in a couple of years ago when I visited my my mother-in-law, and we actually got to hang out.
You went out,
go to some shows.
Was that the 2020 Dome show? Is that when you went?
No, it was 2019. It was just kind of like a random September.
Okay. So not when everybody else went. This was just your own show.
No, it was just we were just hanging out. I got to see him at TotoCon, the wrestling merchandise store, and there was a Q&A with Rick Steiner that he was hosting.
Oh, cool.
Because Rick Steiner was at the Jimmy Suzuki show, and we went to Stardom. Got to see. It was funny because the show was the Cinderella Stardom show. It was all about Hana Kimura. Everything was about her. She won 2 matches that night. She won the whole thing. And Fumi was sitting next to me saying, this is the one. She's going to be on some TV show like next year. Like, that's one of the reasons why I wrote that series of articles. I mean, I was watching her right before all this stuff happened. She was ready to blow up. It was so short in between, like seeing her and then everything else. Julia had just signed that week.
Oh, I know. I remember
when she was a nobody. She was like an ice ribbon kind of random person.
Well, and didn't they put Julia in the Dome show the first year they did them, and she'd only been wrestling for like a couple months, and it was just because they liked her look. And meanwhile, Hana Kimura was the big star, but they put Julia in there because of her look.
She needed a rival. It was partly because of her look. They did. I mean, she went from being like any other wrestler to suddenly, I got to give her credit. I mean, even that match that you mentioned until now, I mean, she's.
Oh, it wasn't bad. It was but the gap, she didn't deserve the spot
here.
Yeah.
Well, that's how they think about it, especially in something like Stardom. They have like investments.
Yeah.
You can see that too. Like somebody like Jay White, they're not going to like get buyer's remorse and pull back. They're going to go all the way. No, even if it's not working out, they're going to try.
Evil, Master Khan, like there, or Master
Great
Wado,
Okan?
whatever. Great Okan, Master Wado, Master.
Yeah,
and I remember all those vignettes, and then it's like we got this.
He's an interesting. Am I watching
WWE?
Well, that's Bushi Road. I mean, you're gonna get a lot. Yeah. That's another thing too. I wonder how much of like the, there's the in-ring creative that's booked, but there's also like the outside hands. Like, we need you to promote this kind of character. We want you to look like this character on our trading cards. There's a lot of that connection to Bushi Road and TV Asahi wanting things to look a certain way. So kind of messier than something like WWE.
So we're just about done. I had something that came into my head in the last couple days, and you're the perfect guy to ask this question, and I'm going to ask you a question that you're totally not prepared for, and it's fine.
Okay.
But things. You've followed this product for a long time. Is there any chance that Bushi Road would ever, like, I know it's the most profitable division they have, but is there any possibility that they would ever sell New Japan?
Sure. Yeah,
so
it's profitable, but
what if that was Tony Khan's big deal, Everyone's thinking ROH. What if he's buying New Japan?
I think while that would be
that
cool,
be
I
enough
think
to like make
logistically,
the internet blow up?
I think logistically is not possible right now because of like COVID and Omicron. I don't think. I don't know. I have
Could
no
you
idea.
just buy it and just leave the infrastructure in place for now?
No,
You know,
because
like,
there's TV channel involved in that too. TV Asahi.
oh, okay. But
So TV
I mean,
Asahi has like a slice of.
so is there a
ownership.
contract with Bushiroad or with New Japan?
It's with every. It's like a three. It's like. It's kind of partly. It's mainly owned by the Bushiroad company, but TV Asahi is a percentage ownership.
Okay,
and
I'm just wondering, like, so what would change? Like, if all of a sudden they had a new owner, what would change as far as TV?
Like a new primary owner?
Yeah. Like if he was just doing it to get his hands on the library and the roster to be able to use them as he saw fit, but for now he just leaves it in place. Like I'm just thinking, like, okay, everyone's thinking ROH, and that was my initial idea as well, and you know, and it makes sense on some levels, although you know, he can't run another company right now. So if it's just buying the library, but is that enough to like churn the wrestling world upside down like he's talking about? Like I don't see acquiring a tape library, even as good as Ring of Honors is, I don't see that being it. But if he's actually buying the company, that's another story.
Or if he's buying a catalog for a streaming service that's about to launch.
Right. Or
that
like,
could
you know,
be big news.
And that's where like a New Japan World, you know, like is valuable because you've got that back catalog and then you've also got all your own stuff that you can throw on there at some point. So even if it's like a partnership, not necessarily, you know, maybe like a 49%, you know, deal.
Yeah.
You know,
like
and then that
like
gives an influx of cash to New Japan that they probably need right now. But it also gives him access to their talent, which he has now anyways, but this would be a more formalized agreement. And also for him to send guys over there because he's got freaking, it's like 150 people under contract at that company right now and 3 hours of TV, you know? So if you could send like 10 guys over there for 6 months, like how much better are they going to be in 6 months? And how much of an injection would that be to the New Japan audience to see guys like, you know, the Varsity Blondes? They'd be over huge in New Japan, you know, like the Gun Club. They would love that, with especially if Billy went with them, you know, like guys like that. And they get so much better, you know, working with, you know, Ashii and Yano and like Nagata and all that stuff, you know, as opposed to like wrestling jobbers every week. I don't know.
I mean, I of course it would be cool, but I just think that because they're focused on being in the States with New Japan Strong as the brand too. Yeah, so I don't think they would just trash
there is that. Yeah, there is that.
I think this idea, I think fans might hate this idea, but from a business standpoint and from like just logic, I think WWE is in a much better position to do something like this. And it doesn't have to be with New Japan, but with any other company or even New Japan. I mean, people don't realize like all companies are here financially, and then WWE is like way up there. It's not like even close. It's like
that deal they just signed today. Did you see that?
It's just so much. There's money everywhere. But
did you see the deal they signed today?
What, the India TV deal?
No. The
I haven't looked. I haven't looked at that.
Oh, the A&E thing. They just signed. Like, I'm guessing this is like a 9-figure deal. They've got 35 episodes of biography, 24 episodes of that Hidden Treasures, 40 hours of the Rivals series. Like, this is a multi-year deal. This is worth at least $100 million. And they're just, you know, no figures were announced, but just the amount of content that is, like, they're in a different league. Like, this is like a side deal for them, and that's more money than AEW's primary TV deal, you know, which, I mean, it's
like one show in Saudi Arabia is AEW's revenue.
Yeah, for the whole year. Yeah.
While AEW, it would be cool, and it would be cool to make dream matches. I think New Japan is too big to be bought out by them, but too small to like work as a side group with. I don't know. I mean, it depends.
Yeah.
It also depends on what AEW wants to do. There's so many like unanswered questions. And when the ROH deal, like at 2019, things kind of started dissolving with sort of inside with ROH. New Japan, they started. You can see they don't have one alliance anymore. They have a number of local alliances. We want to go to Seattle. We're going to hook up with these guys. When we want to go to Northern California, we'll hook up with these guys. So I think it's a more conservative and safe approach. Like big risk is not a thing in Japanese business,
or even
slow and steady.
Impact, even what they're doing with Impact.
Sure,
like
it's safe.
Yeah,
slow, steady, and safe is the business way for many Japanese companies. Risk there, it's risk aversion city.
I believe, and I don't know this for sure, but I have reason to believe that when Tony Khan was originally thinking up, the idea for AEW, I think the first idea was to actually just purchase Ring of Honor and try to get a real TV deal for it. Have the roster, have the tape library, but Sinclair didn't want to get rid of it at that time.
All In felt like a very much an ROH production.
Oh, for sure. I mean, they couldn't have done that show without ROH being involved. I mean, they had their commentators, they had their production, they had a lot of the talent. But I know that there were talks going on about, okay, how much is this company worth? And would it be feasible to buy it, pump some money into it, and make it be a competitor? And then I guess they must have just decided, no, we're better off just starting on our own. And I think in hindsight, they probably made the right call. Although it wasn't really their call to make, because Sinclair didn't want to sell Ring of Honor. And for all we know, they still don't. I mean, we're assuming, but we don't know. So you know what? That's just going to probably wrap it up. But I had a lot of fun here, and I'll definitely try to have you on again at some point.
Yeah, let's do it again.
And maybe after I watch the Miyahara stuff, you could have me on your show. Because I may become a fan. I will say I fell in love with Ishii when I watched his match with Hanma at New Beginnings in 2014, I want to say, and he's my favorite wrestler now, so you never know. So for Justin, and I want to publicly thank you for the awesome job you do editing my garbage that I submit every week and turning it into readable material. So I'm just kidding. I'm humble. As we talked about at the beginning, we're coming full circle here. So for Justin, I've been Grandpa Dez, and this has been Cup of Joe with Grandpa Dez. All right. That was fun.
Cool.
So I'll put this up